All throughout history, witches were killed and discriminated against for their religion and lifestyles due to the ignorance and fear of their persecutors. Even today, witches are still closely associated with many negative stereotypes and labels. In this podcast, I am going to tell you about my immersion into the world of witchcraft and what the life of an average witch looks like in the 21st century. I present to you Modern Magic. In my elementary school years, an ideal sick day off of school was spent on my couch watching Charmed, a series about a group of sisters who discovered that they were witches. As I watched them cast spells and fight demons, I would often think to myself, I have sisters, could I be a witch? I would then go outside and pretend that I could control things like the weather and when a bolt of lightning would strike. Sometimes my timing would be right and the wind would blow when I told it to, or a bird would fly away right when I thought it would, but the number of times I was wrong far outweighed the times I was right. With each failed spell, my dreams of becoming a witch became more and more unrealistic, and by the time I reached middle school, I gave up on my magic entirely. When this project was first assigned, the word witches popped into my head, and I immediately knew that they were the group for me. I proceeded to open up Facebook, where I searched for the words Denver, Coven, and witches, and it shocked me how many groups came up. After messaging multiple of the group's administrators, two incredibly kind witches agreed to an interview, and one group invited me to one of their meetups. Usually, the idea of meeting a bunch of strangers would terrify me, but because I knew that the world of witches was dominated by females, I was far more comfortable with contacting and planning gatherings with these people. In many forms of media, witches are often depicted as Satanists who eat children, sacrifice animals, and walk around naked. As an atheist, I wasn't worried about them worshiping Satan. However, as someone who's also superstitious, what frightened me was the possibility that I'd be cursed if I upset one of the witches. My mother's main concern, however, was that I made sure to ask each person I talked to if they had the ability to tell us the winning lottery numbers, though she was also kind of worried that I was going to conform and join a coven. While the idea of a witch with a pointy hat and a broom felt normal to me, the idea of a witch in the real world was something I couldn't fathom. Thus, before I met these witches, I felt the need to educate myself on the history of witchcraft, which is full of death, lies, and misunderstandings. Contrary to popular belief, witchcraft existed long before Christianity. The earliest witches were simply women who worshipped goddesses. Then, in ancient Middle Eastern civilizations, they took the form of wise women who made house calls, delivered babies, dealt with infertility, and cured impotence. The oldest written record of these women is in the book of Samuel that tells the story of the witch of Endor, who told King Saul, the first king of Israel, a prophecy. Then, in the Old Testament, Christians officially condemned witches and made them out to be bad. The persecution of witches began in Europe in the 1400s after a plague hit and killed much of the population. Those accused of being witches were mainly single women, widows, and other women on the margins of society, though some men were executed after being accused of practicing witchcraft. Many of the accused only confessed after being subjected to inhumane torture, and between the years 1500 and 1660, up to 80,000 suspected witches were put to death in Europe. It was in this time period that the term witch hunt was first used because of the mobs who went around trying to find those practicing witchcraft. This fear of witches spread to many other countries, including the 13 colonies where 150 people were accused of witchcraft and 18 people were executed during the famous Salem witch trials in 1693. Now, in the modern day, witches have become nothing more than a fictional character or an overused Halloween costume. Many movies and TV shows surrounding witches are constantly replayed during October, from the children-eating Sanderson sisters of Hocus Pocus to the green, big-nosed, wicked witch of the West from The Wizard of Oz. With the recent increase in popularity, Witchcraft again became a huge pop culture phenomenon, prompting many new types of media about witches. A new show about the world of magic that's gained lots of popularity is Netflix's Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, where the main character and her family are all witches who worship Satan, playing into the past Christian stereotypes. Even today, many witches are still persecuted for their beliefs and lifestyles. In Papua New Guinea, several men and women suspected of using witchcraft have been beaten and killed since 2018. Despite the stereotypes and negativity towards them, there's still a large population of witches all across the world who openly show their pride and love for the world that they live in. My first interview was with a witch named Nina Patrick. Nina is a 32-year-old retail worker who is a witch and an administrator for the Colorado Witches Meet, a Facebook group that connects witches and helps educate anyone seeking knowledge about the world of witchcraft. Unknown to me when I first messaged her on Facebook, Nina is also known on Instagram as the @ColoradoWitch, where she has almost 17,000 followers. She first created her profile as a way to connect with clients, but because of the recent increase in witchcraft's popularity, it quickly blew up. To begin the interview, I first asked Nina whether or not she was okay with being a witch or if she preferred the title of pagan or Wiccan. She said that she herself didn't mind the term witch, but others may distance themselves from the title because of the negative connotations. There's also a very big difference between witches, Wiccans, and pagans, she told me. Not everyone who is a pagan or a Wiccan is a witch, and not everyone who is a witch is pagan or Wiccan. She explained how Wiccans tend to be more traditional and most worship the goddess Gaia, while pagans differ from Wiccans because they're less traditional and they follow multiple gods and goddesses, whether they're Greek or Viking, and they don't subscribe to a specific deity. Nina personally practices what is known as chaos magic, meaning she will pick and choose things that work for her, and most of the people she's met tend to do the same. Nina is also a generational witch, and both her mother and grandmother practice forms of witchcraft. Thus, she's been a witch her whole life, and she grew up worshipping Gaia. When asked, Nina explained that being a witch isn't particularly a religion for her, but more of a spiritual pathway. Additionally, she's built a part-time job around it, as she does both tarot cards and various types of divination work for clients. The kinds of divination she does are palm readings, tea leaf readings, and pendulum readings. She'll also do spells and rituals for people, but she encourages her clients to do it themselves because your magic is always much more powerful if you do it yourself. What are the most popular spells she works with? Love spells, of course. Nina, however, discourages her followers from casting love spells, explaining that you can't make other people fall in love with you, and most of the time, they're actually incredibly ineffective. Others who perform things like hoodoo, voodoo, and Santeria will perform love spells for people, and in the slim chance that they do work, they're very forceful and can take away consent. While Nina can't necessarily see her magic, she can feel it, and many witches will also picture their magic as something visual, like a light, to help them cast their spells. The majority of magic witches do circles around manifestation, she explained. Most of the witches she knows cast spells to bring things to them that they need in their lives. For example, if someone is looking for a new place to live, they might say, "Okay, universe, I'm looking for a new house and I've saved up $5,000, and the universe would bring it to them. The universe also, however, can't give my mother the lottery numbers she wanted, and if it could, Nina would have used them for herself. If she does a ritual with other witches, she'll leave with a pounding migraine because of the constant taking in and pushing out of energy that a ritual requires of someone. Due to this, and some past negative experiences with her old covens, Nina prefers to do magic alone. She also finds that she's just more in tune with her powers when she does it herself. In the world of witchery, there are some rules people may follow. One of them is the threefold law, which states if someone puts out negative energy, they're going to get 3 times that negative energy back, and the same goes with positive energy. This rule is most commonly followed by Wiccan practitioners. As it turns out, it is also usually the reason why many witches don't curse or hex and are vegan. Nina herself doesn't believe in this rule, but she does believe in the basic laws of karma, so she's vegan and, to my relief, she doesn't believe in hexing people. The only rules she follows are don't hurt animals and don't kick babies, and if you follow those rules, you're good. Again, people who practice witchcrafts like voodoo, hoodoo, and Santeria, however, are very different. They're not afraid to curse someone, so she explains to not let anyone ever have a piece of your hair, because it will end up in a jar. Much like every social group in the world, Nina mentioned that there are some things in the world of witchcraft that can get someone kicked out. She's seen someone get excommunicated from a coven for wanting to practice skyclad, another word for naked. She's also seen someone banned for wanting to practice sex magic because, in her words, not everyone is comfortable with that. In addition, Nina's met many female witches who are hesitant to work with straight men, especially straight white men. This is because they found that straight men are more likely to be greedy for power, or they'll want to make things sexual, or they'll want to control women. While she has no problem working with men, Nina agrees that male witches should come into the world of magic with the idea that they need to respect the femininity that comes with that, regardless of whether they're Wiccan or pagan, because the earth is female and she is our mother. Thus, she knows plenty of male witches who are feminists, but she also knows men who are part of Odinism. Her way of explaining Odinism is that it's like white supremacy, but with magic, and it's horrifying. She says that those men are not magical, and they're nothing more than, in her own words, garbage dumpster human fire people. As someone who is bisexual, polyamorous, and a witch, Nina found Denver to be an amazing place to live. She says Denver is a hub for magic and has far more magic shops per capita than most places do. There she could be out and proud with both her spiritual pathway and her sexuality. A lot of the witches I know are bisexual, polyamorous, or asexual, or they're very content and honest about who they are sexually, she remarked. The ones who aren't are people who tend to be really uncomfortable with any kind of sexuality, including their own. When Nina had to move 2 hours away from Denver to a more conservative town, she was forced to be a little bit quieter about her lifestyle. If she was open about what she is where she now lives, the people there would not be accepting and she could actually be in danger. On the bright side, Nina is still able to be out and proud around her family and when she's back in Denver. Last year, during Gay Pride, she walked around with a sign that said "Witches love gays," showing her support for all. When asked about the stereotypes she faces, Nina immediately noted one of the first things people assume is that she worships Satan. Her response to those who assume that? Nope, that's a Christian thing and we don't believe in Satan. To avoid scaring away people who are interested in witchcraft, Nina avoids wearing pentagrams even though to witches it just represents the 5 senses of earth, fire, water, wind, and spirit, all because of its association with devil worshipping. Despite the fact that she's vegan, people will also assume that she does animal sacrifices, or that she'll eat their children, but unless your baby is made out of tofu, she's not really here for it. Many people will also try to get her to do her magic in front of them right at that moment, but only fictional characters on TV can snap their fingers and make magic happen. Those people then tend to tell her that she can't do magic because they simply can't see it. Like me, Nina grew up watching Charmed and reruns of Bewitched. Shows like those meant a lot to her and her fellow witches because the characters practiced witchcraft in a way that many of them understood. It was also nice to finally see media portraying a character of a good witch. The fighting demons and making things blow up, however, are specific to TV, and they're not a good representation of what witches do. When asked about the chilling adventures of Sabrina and how they worship Satan, Nina says that she wishes they wouldn't. But shows like that are also what draw people to her spiritual path. It gives them an opportunity to learn about something they have never even thought about before, or something that they've been scared to embrace. Is magic reserved for only Nina and her fellow witches? No, she answered, because everyone in the whole world has the opportunity to be magical and practice witchcraft. While more traditional and other generational witches may disagree with this, the idea that anyone can be a witch is what she's built her platform on. Yes, some people are more inclined to be witches than others, and some people can be about as magical as a toaster. But if you're putting yourself out there and trying, that's what's important, and that is what the universe recognizes. Thus, Nina dedicates herself to educating people about the world of magic, and she is always willing to answer anyone's questions. My second interview was on February 27th, 2020, with a 34-year-old witch named Rose Marie. Rose has her bachelor's in a mixture of both Spanish and business from the University of Colorado Boulder. She currently works as a human resource manager at a food manufacturing facility, and she's been there for 8 years. Like Nina, Rose is fine with the title of witch, but her exact label is an eclectic witch, meaning she has a variety of different beliefs. Rose was drawn to witchcraft at a very young age, starting around the 5th grade. Her family was Catholic, however, so when she secretly bought a book on spells in the 6th grade, she had to hide it from her family. Once she turned 15, she got her first deck of tarot cards, and she was also very interested in things like the Ouija board and spirits. It wasn't until about 4 years ago, however, that Rose really started diving into the world of witchcraft. Despite this, Rose believes that everyone is a generational witch, because through studying, she's learned that all our ancestors dabbled in witchcraft in one way or another in every part of the world. When it comes to spells, Rose explains that she writes them herself and it takes a lot of effort and time to put them together, so she has to really want it. She says that the first spell she did was when she was around 5 or 6 years old and she tried to control the wind. In her memory, she recalls concentrating really hard on making the wind blow at a certain moment, and it always would. At the time, Rose didn't realize what she was doing, and now she knows that it may have only been the weather, but even that is a form of spellcasting. In addition to an interview, Rose sent me a copy of a script from her coven's new moon ritual that she ran on the 25th of January. Her coven switches off who runs each ritual, and for hers, Rose chose to do it in praise of the goddess of the earth, the mighty Gaia. The ritual required many things like candles, a singing pot, and more. Before the ritual, the coven came together and meditated. After meditating, the ritual started with Rose cleansing the room with sage. They then invited and called on the gatekeepers of each of the 5 elements, welcoming them into the circle. Then they asked Gaia to honor them with her presence and to accept their offerings of wine. Each of the members then took an arugula seed and they put their new moon's intentions into the seed, which the members then planted and watered. The expectation was that once the arugula grew, each member would eat it to materialize and manifest, and then they would thank the plant and bury what was left of it. To end their rituals, they then dismiss the goddess and each of the elements, and then they meditate to reconnect with the earth. When asked about her script, Rose explained that most rituals don't usually have such outlines. This is where her past of growing up Catholic influences her witchcraft. Due to her stricter upbringing, she finds comfort in having things planned out and very structured. Thus, her ritual ended up being more similar to that of a Wiccan ritual, meaning it was more traditional and very structured. The coven Rose is a part of is called the Black Lotus. She's not too fond of the name, but she's found her place in it. She found her coven through a Facebook group that she runs, called the Denver Witches Coven. They meet every new moon and full moon, which are called Esbats, and during the Sabbats, which are the winter and summer solstices, and also the fall and spring equinoxes. Black Lotus also meets for the midpoints between the Sabbats. For these, they gather and throw a celebration and ritual. In terms of sharing with people that she's a witch, Rose's family and her closest friends all know. She doesn't go out of her way to keep it a secret at work, but she also doesn't go out of her way to tell people that she's a witch. At times, she's tempted to, but she explained that part of the stigma of being a human resource person is that you're an example, and you must be perfect. While Rose does follow the basic laws of karma, she doesn't have any real rules in her witchcraft. She does, however, follow her own personal set of morals. No, she's not vegan, but she feels guilty that she's not. She also doesn't hex people, but she knows people who do. From what she's heard, one doesn't usually hex unless it's really, really, really called for, and most of the time, it's more of a binding where if that person comes at someone, then something will happen to them. Like other witches, Rose faces many stereotypes when she tells people that she practices witchcraft. She finds it humorous how so many people will go straight to assuming that she worships the devil. These stereotypes are why she's open to doing interviews, because she believes that the more that she can break the stigma and get the word out, the better off witches are. Rose also wants to point out that the history of witches has been mostly written by Christians and not witches themselves. And because of this, all the stereotypes of witches were formed out of fear, hate, and ignorance. While the media does perpetrate the negative stereotypes of witches, Rose still finds it highly entertaining and loves watching it. She of course prefers the few movies and TV shows which show good witches, but she likes the dark ones too. Like Nina, Rosemarie is a strong believer that everyone can be a witch. She believes it's in everyone's blood, and that's one of the many reasons why she thinks I'm so interested in the topic. To those who are interested in witchcraft, Rose suggests that they join one of the many amazing Facebook groups. She also encourages reading because there are many amazing books on witches out in the world, but at the end of the day, they need to listen to themselves more than anyone else. My last observation was on February 28th, 2020. When I first started messaging people, it proved difficult to find groups who were holding events for me to observe in the timeline of the ethnography assignment. Thankfully, the Facebook group Denver Metro Witches meets every other Friday, and they plan to meet up for Friday, the 28th. They hold their meetups at the Lair of Abraxas in Westminster, a tea and hookah bar where one can go and play games and celebrate Greek culture. The topic of the meetup became Ask a Witch after I messaged them, inviting others aside from me, such as less experienced witches, to also come and ask them questions. There, I met 9 of the Denver Metro Witches: Greyheart, Sunny, Josh, Jeremy, Sherry, Felicia, Aline, and Arwen of Trek. Of the witches I met, 3 identified as male and the other 5 identified as female. When asked if any of them associated themselves with Wiccan or pagan, it became very clear that the group was almost all pagan. One of the female witches, Aline, said that she's an eclectic grey witch, but a lot of times she tells people in the public that she's Wiccan because it's more socially acceptable because they are all white light, rainbows, and unicorns. She then explained that grey witches are white most of the time, but they don't have a problem going dark if they need to. And when you mix black and white, you get grey. The majority of the other members agreed that you need to use both white and dark magic. This means that they were all fine cursing and hexing. Greyheart, the leader of the Denver Metro Witches and a highly sought-after pagan teacher, says that if someone is just going to be light, then they're only using half of their abilities. He then explained how using black magic is called shadow work, which is to acknowledge one's dark side and recognize that it's part of who they are. Much like the concept of yin and yang, they express that one must be dark and light to be balanced. Aline then added that there's no such thing as white or black magic. Energy just is. It's simply the intent of the person using the energy as to whether or not it's dark or light. It's like a hammer sitting on a table. It's neither good nor bad. Then, when someone picks it up, it can either be used to make something or it can be used to destroy something. Another female witch named Sunny then jokingly added in a snarky voice, "Are you a good witch or a bad witch?" And the whole group laughed. One of the other people there to ask questions was a newer witch named Jeremy. It was his first time going to a Denver Metro Witches meetup, and he came for guidance and advice. When the group talked about using dark magic, he quickly disagreed with them and expressed that something inside of him made him only feel the need to use light magic. Later, however, he asked that if he used black magic on his wife to make her stay with him, would he pay for it negatively? The group then joked around, telling him that if he needs to use a spell to make his wife stay with him, then he needs to get a new wife. All throughout the meeting, he made jokes and serious inquiries about using dark magic on his wife, forcing the group to either brush past it or smile awkwardly. The group explained that many witches work in information technology, or IT, massage therapy, health care, and other jobs with lots of energy tied to them. Aline, who's a paramedic, talked about how her witchcraft can come in handy with her line of work. For example, if she's trying to help someone and people are getting too close or they're getting in her way, she'll slap a protective bubble around them so fast no one will even realize it. Those people will then back away without knowing why. She can also offer her energy to people who are hurt. The patients don't have to take the energy, but they can if they want. Gray Hart also revealed that he's a libertarian who is planning to run for Congress, and Sunny is his campaign manager. He said that if he wins, he looks forward to telling people that they've elected a witch. Each member in the meetup shared that they've faced many negative stereotypes as witches. Aline shared a memory about a coworker who kept telling her not to hex him or put a spell on him. Eventually, she got mad and she told him that he wasn't worth her energy, and even if she did, he wouldn't know. Gray Hart then told a story about a time that he was escorting for Planned Parenthood and someone saw the pentagram that he was wearing and said, "You don't look Jewish." The members then all revealed that their pentagrams are commonly mistaken for the Star of David too. They've also all commonly faced the stereotype that they worship the devil even though they don't believe in him. The devil's a Christian concept. We don't believe in him, therefore we can't worship him, Aline explained. Aline also said that she doesn't show her pentagram at work because she's worried about patients refusing care because they think that she's going to hurt them. As a result of these stereotypes, many people stay in what they called the broom closet. Each person that I talked to at the meetup also shares the same belief as Nina and Rose that anyone can be a witch. One thing Sunny pointed out is, unlike other religions, witches don't try to evangelize or force their religion and lifestyles onto others. Instead, they believe that the path is revealed to someone when it's the right time for them to find it. If they could say anything about witches, it's that they're just like everyone else. They just follow a different religious path. Aline clarified that they also believe in God. They just don't see him in the same way, and they don't think that he's a single parent. Gray Hart expressed that witches are your neighbor, your coworker, your boss, your great-grandmother who practices the old ways, and you won't know who they are unless you know what to look for, or unless they reveal themselves to you. Throughout the observation process, I was continuously shocked with how lucky I got with the people I talked to. All the witches I talked to were more than people just sharing their stories. They were also educators and teachers willing to teach anyone about every aspect of witchcraft. Although I had an initial fear of getting cursed by one of the witches, there's not a single witch that I met who made me worry about being hexed. The only person who ever made me feel uncomfortable was Jeremy because of his constant jokes about controlling his wife. However, my interviews with other witches assured me that the majority of witches don't share those values. Gray Hart said it best. If you ask 10 witches a question, you'll get 13 answers. I went into this assignment thinking I'd end up with an idea of what witches are really like. However, now that I've met many witches, I realize how different witchcraft can be for each individual. Another thing that surprised me was that witchcraft was around me all along. As it turns out, many of my favorite book series and TV shows are full of elements of rituals and magic. I also had multiple people who are part of my everyday life tell me that they either knew witches or that they were witches themselves when I told them about my topic. After hearing about the values of modern-day witches, I'm shocked at how out of touch the stereotypes about them are. Despite the fact that many witches are vegan, people assume they do things like eating children or sacrificing animals. It's also sad that witches will always have a long history of being killed for worshiping Satan, even though they don't even believe in him. They are prime examples of how ignorance and hate will only lead to negatives. It was a beautiful thing hearing about a religion that celebrates and worships femininity. These feminine roots were also quite evident in everyone's morals. At some point in every observation, the topic of hexing being justified in cases of sexual assault came up without me even mentioning it. Nina also shared that when Donald Trump became president, many witches came together to curse him because of his lack of respect towards women. While I won't be converting to paganism anytime soon, both Nina and Rose were kind enough to invite me to different events, and I will be continuing my pursuit of knowledge on the world of witchcraft. On the next full moon, I'm also going to try planting an arugula seed with all of my wishes put into it. I may skip the ritual and the part where they buried the rest of the plant, but that's okay because I've been told that I can take what works for me and make it into my own modern magic.